you hear about it all the time, the golden era. Trump has self-proclaimed this next 4 years. Maybe the U.S. is going to go back to a gold standard, and maybe they will be backing their currency by gold. There's been rumors for decades the U.S. does not have that gold at Fort Knox. So the amount of gold that has been shipped over the past 3 months is historic. Millions and millions and millions of tons of gold valued in the hundreds of billions of dollars. The other rumor is we're looking to potentially reset the price of gold.
Everyone has gold, all the countries. How can the U.S. have that power to do that?
They would be willing to pay any country in the world $10,000 an ounce US for their gold.
Oh, wow.
It would allow them to pay off their debt quicker. It would build more credibility to the US if the US dollar, if they started to back it by gold, even a percentage of it.
Now it seems like liberal media is making the new villain. It's Trump who's enforcing these tariffs. Then you have the liberal government combating with that, getting into a tariff war.
The numbers he's been throwing out are just so intimidating and scary, and would be an absolute disaster to our economy. Also very bullish for precious metals.
There's so much positive for precious metals. It's like you can't even keep up. Okay, this is episode 27 of the Gold Awakening podcast, and there's so much news to cover. Let's start off with one of the most important things, and will lead. There's a lot going on with gold right now. So first of all, Doge, Elon Musk, and Trump are exposing Fort Knox. So what's this about? So the government claims that there's 4,580 tons of gold valued at $425 billion, but no one has ever checked this. No one has ever audited this. What's this mean, Mike? Help us out here.
Yeah, so the last audit on Fort Knox was in 1974, and even at that time, they only audited one of the 15 vaults at Fort Knox. So only 6% of the gold was actually audited. So the reality is, in no time in history has the gold within Fort Knox ever been audited, even though it is the Treasury's gold. It's the U.S. Treasury's gold, but the Federal Reserve is not allowing it to be audited. So it's interesting that it hasn't been audited up to now, and now obviously Elon Musk is discussing it. It looks like it's something that Rand Paul, the senator, is also going to was discussing it yesterday, saying that let's make this happen. So it looks like it's going to happen. Now, there's been rumors for decades around the fact that the U.S. does not have that gold at Fort Knox, and they've been leasing it out to other countries around the world because of the shortages in the precious metals markets. So the only way you can rig the markets is if you're able to deliver it to people when they need it. And a lot of times there's shortages. So sometimes they may have to use gold from Fort Knox to make deliveries. And my guess is that's what's been happening for years and years and years. Now, what we've seen over the last few months is something historic, which we've never seen before. The amount of gold that has been shipped to the United States, specifically in New York, over the past 3 months is historic. You're talking about millions and millions and millions of tons of gold valued in the hundreds of billions of dollars being shipped to the United States from the London vaults. So it's causing a lot of rumors right now. Some people are saying, well, they're doing this to avoid the tariffs that are soon to be coming in from other countries. The other rumor is that they are bringing in all this gold so that if the Fort Knox is audited, that is the gold they're going to be moving into Fort Knox. The other rumor is, and this is one that is very interesting, and it was actually discussed on CNBC yesterday as well, which I found very interesting, is that we're looking to potentially reset the price of gold, which means the United States has the ability to come out tomorrow and say, we are going to revalue the price of gold from its current price of $2,900 an ounce to, as an example, $10,000 an ounce. Okay. So what that would do is strengthen. First of all, it would cause major inflation by revaluing the price of gold. But what it would allow the U.S. to do, it brings the value of their dollar up in terms of where now For example, they would have to reset the price of gold to $140,000 or so an ounce if they wanted to pay off the entire US debt of $36 trillion.
So hold on a minute. 1 ounce would have to equal $140,000.
If they wanted to wipe out the 36 trillion in debt. I don't think they're going to reset it to that number per se, but if they reset it to something somewhere between $10,000 and $25,000, I think that is a big, strong move.
Wait a minute. How can the gold is everyone has gold, all the countries, China, everywhere, Russia. How can US how can the US have that power to do that?
Well, they're the reserve currency in the world. Basically, their statement would be, we are going to be backing our currency by gold, and we're going to revalue it at this price, meaning they would be willing to pay any country in the world $10,000 an ounce US for their gold.
Oh, wow.
Do you know what I'm saying? So that's how you reprice it. You basically tell the world, we're willing to pay this if you're willing to sell us your gold.
So the gold bugs would love that.
Oh, and
Yeah.
it's getting a lot of traction. A lot of very high up respected people in the precious metals community are talking about this and really thinking it's a strong possibility. Now, if this were to happen, I mean, this is a big, big power move by the US. Basically, what they'd be doing is getting ahead of BRICS nations who are looking to do something very similar and
Mm-hmm.
creating their own currency, backing it by 40% gold. So if Trump, and again, you hear about it all the time, the golden era that Trump has self-proclaimed this next 4 years. So I think the fact that he's using that terminology, maybe the US is going to go back to a gold standard, and maybe they will be backing their currency by gold and revaluing the price of gold. Because this would be a huge benefit to the United States. It would allow them to pay off their debt quicker. It would build more credibility to the US if the US dollar, if they started to back it by gold, even a percentage of it. It's never going to be 1-to-1 gold to paper dollars. That's just not
Right.
likely. But if they back it by 10, 20, 30, 40% gold, that's a huge statement. And it would really strengthen the US dollar, and it would really strengthen the confidence, especially the US bonds, because right now they're having a really, really difficult time selling US Treasury bonds. The rest of the world doesn't want them because they know the US dollar is fraudulent, and it's losing value at a rapid pace. Gold's up 40%, 45% over the last 13 months. The US dollar is collapsing in front of our eyes. People look at the
So
yeah, go
yeah.
ahead.
So if they open up this vault and find no gold, that would be a disaster.
Trust me, if their vaults are going to be audited, they probably already know. Maybe that's one of the reasons they're importing the most amount of gold they have in the last few months. So maybe they're well aware of this, and maybe they're just trying to fill up those vaults so that if it was to be audited, that it will be there. And I think it's pretty much a certainty that it will be there because again, their credibility relies on it. Um, it would be a complete disaster if it wasn't there. It would cause a total chaos in the precious metals markets. It would cause total panic in the United States dollar. I do not think that's where they want to go. So I think they're going to do everything in their power to get as much gold into their hands so that if they were to be audited, the gold will be there. But I think they're even go one step above and actually revalue the price of gold to a higher level. Um, so that's a whole, and then backing their U.S. currency by gold.
Now, back where you were saying the UK right now, and this is all over the news. Well, I wouldn't say mainstream media, but the UK has been sending billions of dollars worth of gold to the US. I don't understand that. Can you explain that?
Yeah, you're basically just moving them from one vault to another.
So it is belongs it's property of the United
So
States?
nobody knows who's buying it. Nobody
Okay.
knows who's the owner of this gold. That's kind of where the rumors are all starting right now.
Wow. Okay, so
I mean,
that's where it gets
are
convoluted.
they banks? Is it JP Morgan? Is it Bank of America? Is it the Central Bank of the United States? Is it the US Treasury Department? These are is it billionaires? We don't know who's actually buying this gold. So that's what people are trying to connect the dots right now. I mean, that's why you're having all these rumors right now. It looks like they're going to maybe back their currency by gold. Maybe they're going to be auditing maybe they're trying to avoid the tariffs, or maybe they just want to revalue the price of gold to a higher level to be able to pay off their debt in a much easier fashion. And one of the statements that was made by somebody at the U.S. Treasury was that the U.S. is going to monetize their balance sheet, the assets on their balance sheet. So what that means is right now on their balance sheet, they're valuing gold at $42 an ounce because that's what they purchased it for back in the early 1900s. So it's still on their balance sheet valued at $4,200 or $42. Gold is 2,900 US right now. So now by monetizing it, do they just say, okay, you know what, we're going to make it 2,900 an ounce now to improve their balance sheet by $400 billion? Or are they going to say, you know what, we're going to monetize it, but we're also going to make gold instead of current price of 2,900, we're going to make it $10,000. So now their balance sheet just improved that much more. Their assets just grew significantly, and now their debt is going to be able to go down significantly because of they're going to reprice the price of gold because they have the most gold in the world by far. And my guess is they have a lot of hidden gold that nobody knows about as well. Um, I have a
Now,
feeling that's
why would they have hidden gold? Why wouldn't they want to claim that?
I think there's a lot of hidden gold in the world. I think
Yeah.
China is biggest, probably the biggest, I guess, liar when it comes to how much gold they're buying. I think gold. The rumor is that China's buying 10 times the amount that they're saying. Because you don't want to you don't want to show your hand. It's like playing poker, right? You're playing against other countries. Um, on the books, the U.S. doesn't show us buying much gold at all over the last several decades. But my guess is if they have the ability to print money, why wouldn't they be buying gold? So my guess is they are buying gold and at a much higher rate than people expect. And I think a lot of countries around the world are doing the same. This is the stage right now because you're nearing the end of fiat currencies around the world. All these fiat currencies around the world are going to collapse and implode. And you're seeing that happen right now in front of your eyes. Gold going up 45% in the last 13 months is a direct reflection of the fiat currency system collapsing. The US dollar is no longer trusted. Okay, the inflation around the world is increasing at a rapid rate, and there's no way out. The only way to continue on with the system is to print more money, go into more debt. All that's going to do is make the dollar even weaker and weaker and weaker. So everybody knows we're nearing an end to the old fiat currency system. So that's why you have BRIC nations saying, you know what, we don't want to use the US dollar for trade anymore because we don't trust the US dollar. It's not a strong currency. They go into too much debt. It's being devalued too much. We're going to create our own currency, which we can trade amongst ourselves, back it by gold. And now Trump's coming back and saying, you know what, if you do that, we're going to impose 100% tariffs on all of those BRIC nations. So he's coming, he knows the threat here. And that is the threat of the United States dollar being the reserve currency of the world. Because that is the main reason the US economy is as strong as it is. It's because of they have the US reserve currency. It's the currency reserve of the world. Without that, the United States economy would not be nearly as strong as it is today. So so Trump is going to do everything in his power to keep the US dollar as the reserve currency. But you can't just keep increasing your debt year after year after year, forcing wars upon the world and think your dollar is going to continue to be the reserve currency when you have nothing backing it. There's no faith in the US dollar right now. So this would be an interesting play by Trump if he was to somehow revalue the price of gold, maybe back their currency by gold and get ahead of what BRICS nations are going to do. So this would be a huge statement.
Given what you said right now, why are why am I still standing here and not going to Can-Am Currency or CanAmBullion.com and buying gold? Like, this has got to be the most biggest opportunity ever.
Yeah, there's two big things that could happen in the next few months. One is that they revalue the price of gold from its current price of 2,900 to a much higher price, which is what they did in 1933. Okay, gold was $20 an ounce. They revalued it to $35 an ounce. Okay, so they forced everybody to sell their gold. I don't think they'll do that this time because the truth is not a lot of people own gold anymore. It's not as sought after as an investment as it was back in the early 1900s, especially in North America. Only 0.5% of North Americans own precious metals. So it's not a lot of people. So I don't think it's really worth their time. But to revalue it, I think is a really interesting possibility. And I think that's why you're starting to see a lot of big money go into gold right now. The other big thing is that tariffs are coming potentially. So you might have to pay 25% more for your Royal Canadian Mint gold. because it's coming from Canada.
Mm.
So Canadians might have to start paying an additional 25% on all of their gold and silver purchases, which is a huge increase in cost. And whether that happens or not, nobody really knows. But that's one of the rumors as to why the U.S. is importing as much as they are. It's really hard to say what's going to happen here, but what we're seeing here at Can-Am is a lot of people are getting ahead of this. We're seeing a lot of big money people calling us and saying, you know what, I want to load up on gold. Um, they feel like something is coming. What the action that we've been seeing in the precious metals market over the last few weeks has never happened in my career, or even as long as I've been researching the precious metals market, which has been over a couple decades. Um, we are living during historic times, with the end of a cycle of fiat currencies. We're also entering historic times when it comes to Donald Trump and the moves he's going to be making. I feel like he's coming in guns a-blazing, and he's not going to be slowing down anytime soon. So I think there's some major things coming, whether they're tariffs, whether it's backing the currency but with gold, whether it's revaluing the price of gold to a higher price. There's so many different things that can happen over the coming months that I think a lot of people are just getting ahead of that and purchasing large amounts of precious metals now, just in case any of that stuff does come to fruition. If you just look at the price of gold over the last several weeks, every single day it's going higher, higher, higher,
It
higher.
doesn't stop.
It does. It makes new
Yeah.
highs every day, and
Yeah.
I keep waiting for a pullback to add some more personally and for the business, but it's like
Yeah.
it's not slowing down. So to me, that signals a warning, and I think that's what the hot price of gold going to these levels is. Like this past 12 months is one of the top three performing years all time for gold. That tells you a lot. I mean, that doesn't happen by accident. Central banks around the world are loading up on gold. China number one, India number two, Russia number three. These countries are loading up on huge amounts of gold, and I think you're going to see a crisis at some point happen where I think there's going to come a point where the COMEX or will not be able to deliver the gold and silver to the customers that are demanding it, because they don't actually sit on one-to-one gold. So they sell hundreds of millions of contracts, but they don't actually have that much gold in stock. So they're sitting on less than 1% of actual precious metals for the amount they're selling. So if 1% of the people that are trading on the COMEX demand their gold or silver, the COMEX will be exposed for not actually having it. And I do think that time is coming, and I think it's going to happen in 2025, possibly, maybe 2026. But my guess is something's going to happen sooner rather than later.
So this is must be, in your opinion, you've been in it for decades, like you said before. Is this the greatest opportunity to be in precious metals, period? Gold and silver.
I think so. I don't really see
Yeah.
any better opportunities right now other than precious metals. I'm obviously a big fan of cryptocurrencies as well. But right now, money's moving out of crypto and moving into precious metals. The big money is going into precious metals. The big money, your central banks, the big hedge funds, the pension funds. The big money is really, really loading up on precious metals right now. And there's a reason for that. I always say follow the smart money. I think the central banks are always going to be one step ahead. And if they're buying record amounts of gold, that's what I want to be buying. Um, Obviously, I'm a big
Exactly.
fan of silver as well. I think silver's got a lot more upside potential. The gold silver ratio is 90-1 right now. Gold is currently 90 times more expensive than silver. So, for that reason, I'm buying silver personally because you can get way more bang for your buck. Silver's down 65% from its 1980 price, where gold is up 350%. So for that reason, and not to mention the demand for silver is growing exponentially from an industrial standpoint. Solar
Right.
panels, laptops, electric cars, uh, all these new use cases on the AI front. This all requires huge amounts of silver. So the demand in silver is growing over 10 to 20% a year. So they're having major shortfalls every single year of close to 200 million ounces. Next year, they're projecting a 300 million ounce shortfall of silver. Where are they going to get this silver? So there's going to come a point because the demand is growing exponentially, but the supply is actually slightly declining. Last year, there was a 2% decline in the supply of silver, and the demand is going up huge amounts. So there's going to come a point where the physical silver runs out. Will the gold run out? I personally don't think the gold is going to run out because I think there's a lot of hidden gold that nobody knows about that they'll always be able to access. But when it comes to silver, I think silver is a much more scarce asset and will be much more difficult to source when it's necessary. So I think you're going to see some major, major shortages in the silver markets in the coming months.
So what you said right now, and it's almost becoming mainstream a little bit, is as people are getting away from the dollar, gold, silver, and Bitcoin, some crypto, is becoming the real money. So these are assets that are replacing the fiat
It
currency.
always has
This
been real
is,
money. I
yeah.
mean, gold and silver have been money for thousands of years. This paper money that we're using today is fiat currency. It lasts 2 to 3 decades on average throughout history, and then they have to reset it and back it by gold again. So we're on borrowed time right now. We went off the gold
Yeah.
standard in 1971. We're 54 years into this experiment. We're in the last legs of that fiat currency experiment. I think we'll have a whole new reset. We'll back currency by gold once again. When nobody knows, it feels like sooner rather than later. The way Trump is talking, the way the amount of gold that is moving hands right now, I feel like something may be happening a lot sooner than expected. So the other reason is in precious metals. I mean, inflation's the highest it's ever been in over 40 years. Um, you have all the countries around the world, all the central banks around the world planning to lower interest rates for the remainder of 2025. Okay, that is very inflationary. That's just going to cause more inflation. Canada's already brought their rate down to 3%. I mean, that's inflationary. US is going to follow suit. The US is going to probably lower rates 3 or 4 times over the next 12 months. More inflation. They're going to kill the dollar. They have to. If they What happened last time is they raised interest rates to 5% a couple years ago, and the economy basically came to a screeching halt. The real estate market just stopped. And even though Canada's reduced interest rates by 2% since then, it hasn't stimulated the real estate market at all, not even a little bit. So
Well, homes have become unaffordable still in Canada.
they're still unaffordable. Nobody's rushing into the housing market in Canada. It's still people aren't making more money. Things are just becoming more expensive. So people kind of took themselves out of that market and are just going to be comfortable with where they're living. Some people are looking at selling and moving to other countries that are more affordable, like Mexico, for example. Some people are looking at selling and renting because they just can't afford the day-to-day living anymore. They have to take that equity out of their home just to live. And I think that trend is going to continue. I don't think the housing market is going to rebound anytime soon, or if not ever in our lifetime. I mean, I really don't feel like that. I think that American dream of owning your own home is gone, and I don't think it's coming back. I really don't. I think
Unless you're very wealthy.
the wealthy is always going to be able to afford
Yeah.
houses. And I'm talking
Yeah.
about middle class and the lower middle class. I think they're going to be priced out of that market in the coming decades and years. I think they already are. But my point is the inflation is going to get worse and worse and worse. So your groceries are going to go from 200 a week to 500 to 1,000. Then what are you going to do? How are you going to be paying your mortgage when interest rates are 10%? How are you going to be paying your mortgage when your interest on your mortgage is $2,000-3,000 a month more? Where are you going to get this extra income from? Not to mention we haven't even technically entered a recession yet. Wait until that happens and job losses start. I mean, I think we're at the beginning stages of that now. People aren't really living in fear at this point, a little bit because they're feeling the pinch. They're 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 poor. I mean, they're not poor. They're having a hard time having additional funds to actually invest or do things with. They're just living the day to day. They're living week to week, paycheck to paycheck, and I think that trend is going to continue. And I don't really see things changing for the better for quite some time.
If you think your money is safe, think again. Our economy is on the brink of total collapse. Think back to the 2008 financial crisis. Inflation skyrocketing, stocks tumbling, and banks on the verge of collapse. Sound familiar? It's not just history, it's a warning. And ignoring this warning could be the biggest financial mistake of your life. In 2008, gold and silver were by far the best performing assets. That is why now is the time to invest in precious metals. At Can-Am Bullion, you can order both gold and silver directly from our online store. Can-Am is also an authorized dealer with the Royal Canadian Mint. so you can be rest assured that you are dealing with a reputable bullion dealer. Do you really want to wait for an economic collapse? Now is the time to make a smart and informed decision and protect your wealth with gold and silver. Click the link below to book a consultation with myself or any of our precious metals experts.
So yeah, precious metals will protect you from all of that. It will protect you from the dollar collapse. It'll protect you from an economic collapse. Precious metals always performs well when the economy is struggling. Precious metals always perform well when inflation is high. So we check both those boxes. Check precious metals always perform well when there's uncertainty around the world geopolitically. That's happening right now. Now you got these tariffs that Trump is threatening the world with. Also very bullish for precious metals.
Yeah, so let's get into that, which is bullish for metals again. I mean, there's so much positive for precious metals. It's like you can't even keep up. So um, I think we covered a lot of. But let's talk about Canada versus United States here. And we just seen the hockey game take place where Canadians were booing the U.S. national anthem, and I think they're getting brainwashed by the TV man. Um, because of the tariffs. Now it seems like liberal media is making, now they have a new villain, as the liberals have lost all hope from all Canadians. And if they know that if an election took place today, the conservatives are polling so high, it wouldn't even be election. But now they got a new bad man. They got a new villain. It's Trump, who's enforcing these tariffs, which is getting Canadians all worked up, right? And then you have the liberal government combating with that, getting into a tariff war. How do you see this playing out?
Ooh, my biggest concern short term is that Trump is going to impose these tariffs to Canada, and I have a strange suspicion that Canada may even announce some type of emergency where they actually impose emergency measures where they bring in somebody like Carney into leadership and
Right.
give
And
him.
he's already said that. He's already said something about an
A lot
emergency.
of people have, and delaying the election, and I kind of that's my biggest fear right now. Delaying the election, putting Carney in place to run Canada. I mean, that to me is the scariest possible outcome.
100%. You hit it right there. If you've seen Carney's history, Mark Carney, we're talking about, who's going to replace Justin Trudeau. There's no doubt about that, for the Liberal Party leader. What he's done in UK was a disaster, and if he comes to Canada, I like he's
Even with the Central Bank of Canada, I mean, yeah, this guy, he's a World Economic Forum guy. He is a globalist at every level.
yeah.
He's bad news for Canada. He's going to lead us to a socialist economy without question. Um,
Well, we're already socialists. We're going to be communists.
well, yeah, we're at the beginning stages of that, but I'm talking a whole other level of socialism, communism, call it what you will. That is my biggest fear, and I do feel like there is a strong possibility of that happening. Now, the best possibility is Trump says, you know what, we've worked things out with Canada. Um, Maybe he imposes small tariffs, like a 5-10%, something that is manageable. But the numbers he's been throwing out are just so intimidating and scary, and would be an absolute disaster to our economy, especially the manufacturing auto industry in Windsor specifically. Um, there's so many things that are coming out, and it's like if he were to impose these types of tariffs at these levels of percentages he's talking about, it's going to be a disaster. And again, it's going to be a disaster for the U.S. too. So I don't really think it's going to happen because it would be devastating for the United States economy as well. Inflation would skyrocket in the U.S.
Yeah.
just as it would in Canada. So it's not like this is going to crush Canada alone. No, he's going to hurt the United States of America through inflation as well. So I don't expect him to come out with these huge, crazy tariffs. I feel like there's going to be some type of agreement between our two countries, and things will be worked out. That's the best case scenario. Worst case, like I said, major tariffs. Canada mounts emergency measures, brings in Carney, delay the elections. Canadian dollar collapses. These are all things that are possible. In that environment, precious metals would absolutely explode. Because it's a fear trade, right? When people are scared, they don't want to be invested in any risk-on assets. Risk-on assets being the stock market, cryptocurrencies, bond market. These are all things that are risky for investors. So they'd rather be in something safe.
Right.
There's nothing more safe than gold and silver. They've also announced the United gold as a tier 1 asset, which is I forget the name of the institution, Basel. I forget the name of it, but they announced earlier this year. So the U.S. Treasury bonds were a tier 1 asset. Now the other tier 1 asset, the second one they've announced in history, is gold. So this is the first time they've ever announced gold as a tier 1 asset. So I have a feeling that that's an important announcement, and I think that is leading to what we're seeing now with the gold repatriation. So I think a lot of things are coming in the gold market over the coming months and years. I think, I think there's no better opportunity. I think we're at the beginning stages of a commodities bull market that we've never seen before. And I think precious metals and gold will be leading the way, especially if gold is announced as a reserve currency by any of these countries, specifically the U.S. Um,
I think that would be ginormous for precious metals if they do
Huge,
announce gold,
huge.
or yeah, that would.
I mean, BRICS has already announced it, but they haven't gone live with anything yet,
Yeah.
obviously. But that I think that to me it makes sense with the way Trump's been talking about the golden. He called it the golden era. What did he say it was called? What was it?
Well, that's what they're calling Trump, the golden era with Trump, right?
The golden era. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, but he self-proclaimed that. I mean,
Yeah.
so I feel like we could be going back to a gold standard under Trump, and that might be one of the main reasons the United States is importing as much gold as they have over the past 2 to 3 months.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think he said Trump described as the dawn of America's golden age.
Golden age. That's what it was.
We're about to enter. That's
Yeah. So I
exactly.
mean, I think that's usually the way they
Now,
communicate. Yeah.
now back to the Canada USA thing. Do
Yeah.
you think it's possible, in your opinion, that Canada could become the 51st state? Is that something that's even.
I have a feeling, just from prior research, um, that what the plan here is potentially is a North American Union. I know that's
I,
been talked about for decades. Um,
I agree with you on this one.
I think the European Union was the stage one of
Right.
kind of merging multiple countries into one. And I think the fact that the United States has BRIC nations creating their own currency, backing it by gold, is a huge threat to the U.S. dollar. So I think if the U.S. can combine with Canada,
Hmm.
um, take all of our natural resources, which are
Yeah.
so abundant. I mean, we're one of
Yeah.
the wealthiest countries in the world from a natural resource standpoint. Not sure if they're going to include Mexico in that. If I was the U.S., I would try to, because they have most of the silver in the world is in Mexico. Um, so that is what I believe is going to happen. I do believe that is the intent here, and I think that's why Trump has come out guns a blazing,
Hmm.
um, threatening to take over Canada and make us the 51st state. I have a feeling that there will be some type of agreement. I don't know if it's going to happen during Trump's era or not, but I have a feeling that Canada and the U.S. will form an alliance, call it the North American Union, get rid of the borders, merge their currencies together, create one currency, whether it be called the Amero, like they've talked about decades ago, or
Yeah.
it just stays the U.S. dollar, or
Hmm.
they create some new currency, backing it by gold. Again, that might be a possibility,
Yeah.
because now you're back in the driver's seat. The United States will be back in the driver's seat.
Right.
Join forces with Canada, take
They
our
become stronger. They become 10 times stronger.
way stronger, and they do it
Yeah.
in advance to BRICS nations,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Exactly.
So I think it would be a power play big time by the United States. Obviously, Canada, you lose a big part of your sovereignty, right? When you don't control your money, you
Yeah.
don't control your country anymore. So that's just basically the way it works.
Mhm.
There's that quote. He who controls the money controls the people. So that's where we're at. I mean, Canada is unfortunately, and I know you ask a lot of Canadians out there, they're all on board with this. They all want to. Most people I talk to want to join the U.S.
Some, a lot of people still, they're anti-U.S. for that. They just want to keep
Yeah,
Canada.
yeah, of course. The people singing at the national anthem and
I,
stuff.
I've seen polls. It's been 50-50 range. Sometimes it goes 60-40 US, but a lot of them are close to 50-50.
But I have a feeling they're going to bring Canada to its knees before this happens.
That's
Um,
right on. Which we already are.
we almost are. We're begging already.
We let our country go to shit. That's lack of leadership. I don't care who it is, liberals, conservatives, all through the years, it's been a disaster. Like you said, Canada's the richest country in resources in the world, natural resources.
Yeah,
We should be Dubai here.
yeah, and we're
It,
the
it
only one of the only.
we should be thriving. We put ourselves in a position to be weak and to be. We'll have no choice if Trump slams these tariffs at a hefty duty, 25%, 50%, and some 100%. He will bring us to our knees. And you're right, United States will hurt too, but we will collapse. We will have no choice but to merge. And I think back to your point, that's where he's getting at.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's exactly what I think is going to happen.
yeah,
I think that's what this is all about, and I think that's why Canada is doing as poorly. I think this was a plan that was implemented long ago. I'm a
yeah.
big believer that our world is planned by global elites from decades ago, and now that plan is coming into play. And I feel like Canada was set up to fail it, like we have, to be able to be taken over and not have a lot of pushback. Because the worse Canada is from an economic standpoint, and from an inflationary standpoint, and from a leadership standpoint, the more willing we will be to accepting what the U.S. offers us. And I feel like we're being set up that way, and I feel like it's just a matter of when at this point. Because why else would Trump come in so guns a blazing from before
Yeah.
he even stepped in the office? He went 4 years. He had a 4-year term. He left Canada alone. I mean, we're their number one ally. We went from
Now
their
he
number.
talks about Canada all the time.
Now we're the number one enemy. Like, how did that
Yeah,
switch? Nothing
yeah,
changed.
yeah,
We're pretty
exactly.
much
Good
harmless.
point.
Let's be honest. We're not causing any problems in the world.
Yeah,
We're very helpful to the United States in so many ways. For him to just turn on us, to me, that tells me there's a bigger agenda at play here. And like I said, the North American Union to me makes the most amount of sense because it
right.
has been in the history books for quite some time in terms of phase two of these creating. I don't know if you've heard of this, but the Club of Rome created a document decades ago, making our world into 10 kingdoms instead of, I think there's 188 countries or something like that. So
Mhm.
instead of having 188 currencies, bringing it down into 10. Phase one was the European Union, phase two was the North American Union, and then they created all these little groups around the world.
Right, we're one step closer to New World Order. We're eventually like the evil elites, and obviously this conspiracy, whatever, but they want one currency throughout the whole world,
Yeah, and I
right?
think the easiest way to do that is go from 188 to 10,
Yeah,
and then go
exactly.
from 10 and then
Yeah,
collapse all of those currencies
yeah,
and bring it down to 1, and now they have global control and they have
exactly.
it right where they want us, and that's been the agenda for forever. One world currency, one world government,
Right.
one world religion, and I have a feeling that they're going to do everything in their power to get there. So that's why another reason why I think this North American Union is very, very likely.
So one more thing I want to cover is Trump and Elon. I kind of like their approach right now. I don't know if I trust them fully, right? Because we've talked about that. We like really, you can't really trust any politician. That's we come from that school, right? But I kind of like the accountability with the Fort Knox. Hey, let's go check and see the you said where they're finding all these funds going to like ridiculous millions of dollars
Yeah,
just uh
yeah, they've been wasting money all over the place.
wasted money. And and even Trump just came out, hey, we gave whatever 400 billion to Ukraine. Where's the accounting for that? We want to see where the money went. I kind of like this attitude. I like this because I kind of want to see that in my country too. Is where's the accountability? Like I kind of want to see that. Like because that's what we lack is accountability. And
I think
this
it's great. I honestly, to me, it's one of the best things they are doing.
yeah,
But I don't think it's going to matter in the grand scheme of things when it comes to the U.S. economy. Yeah, it's good to clean things up. It's good to
yeah,
lower costs, but I'm telling you, it's not going to move the needle. I really, your U.S. debt is $36.5 trillion. It's going up by over a trillion every 3 months.
that's right.
Um, your unfunded liabilities is another $200 trillion. What's Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security? These are all unfunded. The U.S. government does not have the money to pay for these services in the future. So where's that money going to come from? So you're talking like $250 trillion in debt. Yeah, going to clean up a few $1 billion here and there.
Yeah,
Yeah, it sounds good on paper. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing. That's great. But the problem is much bigger than that. It
yeah,
really is. And just the interest alone on the debt is over $1 trillion a year. So these savings, they're going to be fine. You're not even talking $1 trillion a year,
yeah.
not even close.
But
So I
what
mean,
you talked about earlier is backing the dollar by gold and increasing the value. Now you're talking. Now you're getting somewhere. You know,
that to me
that's
makes the most amount of sense. And I think
yeah,
the U.S. is desperate as well. I think they know that
yeah,
they're at near the end stages of them being the reserve currency. You don't have the reserve currency forever. You can go
yeah,
out through all past history. Every single reserve currency got moved on to the next. Because once that country goes into huge amounts of debt and they lose faith from the rest of the world, they move on to the next country who is more faithful or more has more assets, more gold, etc. That's usually the number one criteria when it comes to the reserve currency of the world. It's army is obviously a big one, but the next is the amount of gold that you own and the amount of natural resources you own. And that's why the US has the most amount of gold in the world because they are the reserve currency of the world. So that's why China's been loading up to the levels they have been and lying about how much they've been loading up on because they want to be the next reserve currency in the world. They that's been their I believe that's the plan. Whether it's
hmm
BRIC nations or China alone
right,
but the US to get ahead of this and to back their currency by gold and revalue the price of gold, I think would be a huge power play for the US. And to me, it makes a lot of sense, especially if you could merge the Canada with the United States. I think that would be a big, big win for the United States. And I think that's their only play. I don't really see unless they want to just let their empire collapse completely,
yeah,
lose the reserve currency of the world and become a third world country. That's your other option. Or
yeah.
you make a power play move like this, back your currency by gold,
And who better to do that than
than Trump.
Donald Trump? He's
Right?
the
It's just
perfect. The timing couldn't be perfect.
I know.
It's almost like it's scripted.
The whole world is scripted.
Yeah, yeah,
It's that. It's just is it going to be Trump in charge during this transition? I don't know. It's hard to say, but the fact that he has been coming in so guns a blazing and they're
yeah,
talking about auditing the Fort Knox and there's so many things that just to me align with gold being a part of the United States currency in the future. And also Canada being a part of the United States at some point. I think that is a very strong possibility. It might take 10 years. It might take 20 years. I don't know. Or it might happen in the next 24 months.
yeah, yeah. Exactly. The timing, nobody knows, right?
Nobody knows.
But it is happening.
It
That's what
makes
we.
sense to me. It all makes sense. Everything that's happening to me, I can see it happening and I can see why.
So anyone who's watched this podcast right now is probably drooling at the mouth. How do I get gold? How do I get silver? Let's end it off, Mike. What do you recommend? People could come see you with a consultation. They could go online. Give people some direction here. How to get started in protecting their wealth with precious metal.
Obviously, educating yourself first and foremost is the most important. There's so many sources out there online.
Mm-hmm.
We have obviously our podcast, but there's so many other people like Mike Maloney from Gold Silver. There's so many different people. You can go online, just to go on YouTube, and you can watch hours and hours of video around why precious metals is the place to be right now. Number two, I would say, is reach out to a local precious metals dealer in your hometown. establish a relationship with them, ask them the questions that you want answered. Why should you buy?
You offer free consultation, so someone could book with
Yeah,
you
you
at
can
no
come in
charge.
here. We'll talk to you for an hour and talk to you
Yeah,
about why invest in gold and silver, why I think silver is a better opportunity than gold, why you should buy government minted versus privately minted. Should you buy the big bars, small coins, big rounds? What should you be buying when it comes to precious metals? These are a lot of questions that
yeah,
most people new to precious metals have no idea. Most people don't even know what gold and silver look like, to be honest with you. When it
right.
comes to coins and bars, they don't really see it. Because again, their financial advisors are not telling people to invest in gold and silver.
Yeah, because
Uh,
they don't make money on that.
they
Financial
don't make
advisors
money on it,
make
and they don't understand it, to be honest with you. I'm
yeah,
not going to lie. Most financial advisors have no, it's not like they're coming to Can-Am and buying gold and silver. They're not. They don't understand gold and silver as an asset class. They don't, because they've never been taught it. It's not taught in school. It's not taught in their financial advising programs. It's not taught anywhere. It's self-taught. So if you're not a historian and you don't understand the history of money, you're not going to know what gold and silver is and what their purposes are. So financial advisors, unfortunately, have no idea what gold and silver are, and most don't own it. They own mutual funds. That's what they've known, and it's been a good performing asset for several decades. Problem is, they're going to be missing out on a huge, huge commodities bull run over the next few years that nobody's ever seen before in history. I think you're going to see numbers that will make people's heads spin, to be honest with you, especially on
wow,
silver specifically. Yeah, I think you can see the price of silver go up 20, 30, 40 times from its current price. Uh, Stocks are not going to be performing like that. They're just not. Um, in the 1970s, stocks and bonds performed terribly. Real estate all performed terribly. But gold and silver went absolutely parabolic. Silver went up 41 times, gold 25. Real estate and stocks barely got 100% returns over 10 years. That's when inflation was at 15%. So those assets didn't even keep up with inflation. But precious metals tore it apart. And that's what I think is exactly going to happen in this decade. I think you're going to see commodities go absolutely parabolic. And I think you're going to see traditional assets like real estate and stocks and bonds perform very, very poorly. And I think a lot of people are going to get caught over these next few years, losing a lot of their net worth due to inflation,
hmm
due to the lack of their investments not performing well, due to a recession, maybe a depression. There's a lot coming down the pipe that people don't really understand. And I think now is the most important time to be hedged. You got to have a portion of your portfolio into precious metals. You just have to. Anybody who tells me otherwise, honestly, you're ignorant. You don't, and I'm not saying ignorant in a negative way, ignorant where you don't understand it, you didn't do your homework. To not own any gold and silver right now just means you are uneducated on what gold and silver is.
right. Good
Period.
point.
To have all of your investments in stocks or bonds or real estate isn't, to me, is insanity. Yeah, you got away with it for decades. You did. Congratulations. This decade isn't going to play out the same way as the prior four. And most people are going to get caught. And if you're smart enough and you actually are able to diversify your portfolio, which a lot of our clients are, they're saying, you know what? I want out of the stock market. I want my money out of the banks. I'm losing 10% a year to inflation. Why would I keep my money in the bank? You're right. Why would you? Real estate. What's your upside in real estate at this point? Is anybody really buying real estate? Is anybody rushing in for real estate investment opportunities? No. What's the upside in real estate? Is the economy going to have a resurgence? I'll answer that for you. No. Um, so why are people, and I get why people own real estate because it's been such a successful investment, but that's because interest rates came down for 40 years. That is the only reason. They blew up a major housing bubble. They blew up the biggest housing bubble in history in Canada specifically. And now you're going to see that market dismantle. And a lot of people are going to get caught in that. It's unfortunate. Hopefully people wake up. Hopefully people do their homework. They start to buy precious metals. They start to invest in cryptocurrencies. They diversify their portfolio and don't stick to traditional asset classes, because if you do, if you just stick to your same portfolio that your financial advisor set you up with 3 4 years ago, you're in for a world of hurt. And you got to be diversified at this point. You have to have that insurance of gold and silver, and that's what gold and silver is. It's an insurance on your financial portfolio, and without it, all the best to you, but it's not going to be pretty.
All right, let's end on that note. Rush out, get out there. You could go on cannonbullion.com. You could come see Michael if you're from Windsor, and he'll give you a free consultation. If you're in Canada and United States, you could do a virtual or a phone call with an expert. Go see Michael or go see another expert. But the message here is be diversified in precious metals.
100%.
All right.
Thanks,
Great
Marcello.
episode.
All right, buddy. Take care.